So here's the session's flow. We'll kick things off with an interview with a very special guest. Then we'll read a passage in the Bible. And Paul, our male staff worker, will bring us through a talk about what the passage has to say about our biggest question. Then we'll have a special song item, and we'll have some time to buzz and send in any questions about the topic or Christianity in general. And we'll share some resources and announcements so that y'all can find out more. Yeah. All right. So, in our presence, we have Dr. Sarah, who is a consultant in the palliative care team in the National University Hospital of Singapore. And Sarah, with the H, is our female staff worker here at CF. I'll let them introduce themselves further.
Thanks, E-Ray, for the introduction. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah and I'm part of the SMU Christian Fellowship staff team. This is my friend, she's also called Sarah. So basically our parents were living in the era where Sarah was a very popular name. We have many friends called Sarah, right?
Yeah.
Like our batch.
Yeah, in the same year at school, I think there were like 5.
Or more, yeah. It's just like how Elsa is the name for this generation of parents. Ours is Sarah. Yeah. Alright, so let's hear from Sarah. Could you introduce yourself to us?
Okay. Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me here today. My name is Sarah. I'm married. I have 3 kids, age 7, 5, and 1. Like you heard, I'm a palliative care consultant at NUH. Sorry I was late. Just came from work.
It's okay. It's okay. Who are you married to? Did he come today?
It's Ben in the back.
Ben at the back. Hi Ben. Alright. Alright, so palliative care, I think many of us might not be so familiar about it, and I promise we are going to ask Sarah more about it soon. Sarah is also a Christian. Would you say that's like the central part of your identity? So why don't we hear from Sarah first on how she became a Christian?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian family. And I would say growing up, I thought being a Christian was about being a good person. So I thought I was doing quite well because I did quite well in school. I didn't really get in trouble with my parents. And I also didn't really break the law. So when I got to university, that's when I was by myself and I started to question actually, is God really real? What's this all about that I've always grown up believing? Maybe that's some of you here today. So I was in a very similar situation to you. I went to university, I thought that I could be my own person, I wouldn't have to follow what my parents believed. So in university, I met other Christians who maybe sit back and reconsider that. And they actually suggested that I should read the Bible for myself. So I did. And I think that's when I discovered that Christianity wasn't actually just about being a good person. It was about introducing us to the personal God, the person of Jesus. And yeah, so that really changed my life.
Hey, you know what? Same name, same age, and similar journey too. So I think I grew up thinking I was pretty okay also compared to other people. And I honestly didn't understand why I should bother with Jesus. And that changed when I learned to read the Bible myself. So that's our journey, but now let's go back to palliative care. Could you tell us more about it? What does it mean and what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so it's just in Chinese New Year, right? You go and people ask you, what do you do? You're a doctor. What kind of doctor are you? I say palliative care. This is.
They're like, I hope.
Yeah, they're like,
I hope I won't
so I think
right?
it's that, and also I think a lot of people don't really have an idea of what it is. So maybe I'll just introduce it a bit. So palliative care is care for the terminally ill. So we treat patients of any age, and maybe a lot of them tend to be patients with cancer. Many of them are, but not just cancer, but any patient with what we call life-limiting illness, a terminal illness. So it can be an organ failure like heart kidney, liver, lung, any organ that's failing. And they can be of any age. So, majority of my patients, I'd say, would probably be 60 and above. But I have also had patients who are younger than me. So, yeah. So what do I do on a day-to-day basis? So I work in NUH, National University Hospital. I see patients who are admitted in the hospital. So they can be a wide range. Some of them might be dying anytime now. Some may have weeks, months, some may have years actually. But regardless of how long they have, our aim is always to see how we can relieve any pain that they're going through and speak to them and their families about what is important and how to plan for, how to look after them in the future. So I'll give you an example. So recently we're looking after a man that's called Mr. E. So Mr. E is about 50 plus. He has advanced cancer of the tongue. So he's been through lots of chemo and everything, but it's gotten so bad that he can't open his tongue. He's very weak, so he's lying in bed all the time. He can't speak, so he writes on his clipboard everything that he wants to say, and you write back to him because he's also quite deaf from all the treatment. Yeah, so he came to the hospital because he had a sudden, really terrible bleeding from his cancer. And it bled so much he almost died. So it was a big shock. He came to the hospital, and together with his doctors, we had to break the news to him and his family that there wasn't any other treatment that could be offered. So a couple of weeks ago, it was a very emotional time in the hospital because it's Chinese New Year. And everyone had this whole, it's going to be our last reunion dinner and everything. So this was where this was happening. Maybe 2 days before Chinese New Year, everyone was thinking this was going to be his last reunion dinner. So it was a very emotional, tearful conversation, as you can imagine. And then after that, they actually talked about, what now, what's next. So after discussion, he decided that his family probably will be able to cope if he started bleeding a lot at home because it was very horrific. So he decided to stay in hospital. So this was about 3, 4 o'clock. And that evening, his sister actually went off and she bought her rings. And he actually proposed to his girlfriend of 10 years in the ward. They exchanged simple vows. This is really sweet. There wasn't anything formal registered-wise, but it really meant a lot to her to be acknowledged by him and his family. So they did that just in the ward, like drew the curtains around. So yeah, he was with us for maybe another 2 weeks, and then he passed away in hospital. But I think maybe that just gives you a glimpse of what a privilege I have to work in my job. We really had to walk alongside patients, through their struggles and their joys, and to get to know them really intimately, them and their families. So I think, just to summarize it, palliative care isn't about adding days to life. It's about adding life to days.
Yeah, adding life to days. I honestly think that you have a really meaningful job. So if all your patients are terminally ill with cancer or organ failure, and that means that they are all pretty close to death. So is fear of death a common thing in your line of work? How do your patients and their families cope with the fear of death and with dying? Could you share with us also what do they normally turn to?
So I think fear of death is fairly common, as you can imagine, and different people deal with it in different ways. I have some patients who cannot even think about it, let alone talk about it. So they might use euphemisms, going away. And I think the most common thing actually is when they don't want to think about it, they keep looking for more treatment. So they go for a second opinion and third opinion. When you tell them that things are not going well, they're like, oh no, that can't be true, doctor. So I think that is, in a way, how they manifest their fear of dying. They're just trying to push you away so that nobody has to talk about it, them and their family included. Even when everybody has this sense that it's coming, then everyone is just like, oh, just think positive, things will get better. And I think that's a lot of how they deal with it. I think the fear of death is, commonly in 2 different ways. Some people fear what's going to happen, like what's it going to be like to be dead when I'm not with anyone that I know, where am I going to be? And then there's also the dying process, which is what a lot of people fear. Is it going to be painful, or just how long is it going to be? Am I going to be a burden to my family? And what I see for a lot of my patients is actually that helplessness is worse than death. This sense of being out of control, not knowing when it's going to happen, and that really is really, really tough. And I think that's part of our role as well. One of my seniors actually told me that she described our job as being like a tour guide to death. I haven't been there before, but I've walked many people through it. So part of how we help patients is helping them to see what might be coming and to plan and to share with them some things that other patients have found helpful so that they have an idea, and that takes away some of the fear because they get a bit of control about it. So for example, it would be saying that let's not look at walking your daughter down the aisle. How about let's celebrate her birthday next week. Her fifth birthday. You're not, unfortunately, the 20 years down the road is not possible anymore, but let's focus on what we can achieve. And a lot of that is helping them to face that fear by having some measure of control. But ultimately it is a lot of things that they settle within themselves. Everyone's different. And I mean, definitely spiritual things come up a lot. I think people have questions about why me, where am I going, why is this happening, what do I expect, did I do something wrong? I mean, I recall I had a patient recently who was with pancreatic cancer. She's a Buddhist lady with a lot of pain. And so they referred her to us to help with the pain, to give her some medication. But she didn't want to take the medication because she wanted to pray and pray that the pain would go away. So it made it even more complex because whenever she got pain, she would pray, the pain wouldn't go away, and then she would be really like, did I not pray hard enough? So it was like every time she had a pain crisis, she also had a faith crisis. And of course, mixed with all that, she was struggling, why me when I'm actually a good person all my life, and why is this happening to me? So I think death really brings up the fact that there are a lot of questions that are very big in life that we're not able to answer. And that just leaves people fearful and feeling very helpless.
Yeah, I think the fear of death is very real. I think something that I would struggle with, I think some of us here struggle with as well. The uncertainty, helplessness, doubts. And how about for yourself personally, as a Christian, does that affect the way you view death and the way you view your job?
So I think this is quite just what comes to mind is probably a bit roundabout answer, but just stick with me. So I think, like I was saying, when people hear the word palliative care, either they give me a blank look like they're talking about, or they give me this it's like conversation killer, like I don't want to talk about it. And most of the time you get this line where people are like, oh, your job must be really depressing, you must be really strong, something like that. And they would say, I could never do it. So I think a lot of people outside palliative care feel that it's very depressing. So there's kind of this drive going on within palliative care to repackage it. So if you look at palliative care and hospice movement, the symbol is a butterfly. They're trying to tell people that dying is like the cocoon of the caterpillar. The cocoon dies, the caterpillar dies, but then what emerges is a beautiful butterfly. It can be a positive thing. Death, think about it as moving on to the next stage. So I think personally, I find that quite. I don't agree. I feel that death, no matter how you spin it, is not positive. And I think when I think about facing death as a Christian, the death that I see around me all the time, it still makes me very angry and upset because I feel that it's just horrible. Even when I try to do my job the best, it's still, the person still dies because everyone dies and there is so much that's lost from the person who dies, but also the people who have lost this very, very treasured person. So I think, what was that again? Yeah, so I think as a Christian, I mean, what I believe as a Christian is that a perfect God created a perfect world, and He wanted us to be in relationship with Him. But because man chose not to acknowledge the God who made us, that's why death and suffering came to this world. And that actually comforts me because I see that that's why I can be so angry about death, because it's not what God has meant for the world. And it was a big enough problem that God sent Jesus to conquer death and to save us from that. So I think how it affects my job is that I think it gives me great motivation because I believe that everyone is created by God and is to be valued, even to the very end of their life. They are a person, and to value them for the person that they were before they got sick. So I think that's a very big, and a very big fulfilling part of my job, to see the person and to see the mother, the sister, the wife that is in front of me, not just the gallbladder cancer. Yeah. And I think it also, as a Christian, I'm reminded that my job is to comfort. Sometimes in my job, people get very angry, and they're angry with everything. And a lot of times the anger is directed at me as the bearer of the bad news. But I think just as a Christian, remembering that I am here to comfort and to be a channel of God's love is motivating, especially when things are tough. But also, it comforts me in my limitations, because sometimes I feel very sad for my patients. And I remember that I can't take away all the suffering, but I can pray for them, knowing that there's a God who cares and who hears them. So I think being a Christian affects me and my job a lot. And it's probably the one area of medicine where it's acceptable to be asking people, do you have a faith that helps you at this time? What do you believe? And then we have an open discussion with my patients, because it is very real to them, and it's very real to me.
Yeah, I agree with you that death is horrible, but God has done something about it. We're going to hear more about that in the talk later when Paul comes up, so stay tuned for that. Earlier on, Sarah and I mentioned that that Christianity made a lot more sense after we learned to read the Bible. So Paul is going to talk us through the Bible, so stay tuned for that again. For our final question, what would you say to someone who's wondering why bother with Jesus? Why should anyone consider Christianity?
So I would say, like we've been talking about, death comes to everyone. And there are lots of questions that we will face at that point. That some of them may not be so obvious now. But the reason why we consider Christianity is I feel it makes the most sense, that's my opinion. When you consider all the data that is in the world around us, when we look at the Bible, it's not just stories, but things that really happen in history. And most of all, to me, the fact that God sent His Son, Jesus, who claimed to be God, and then conquered death and rose from the dead, that's a really big claim. So, if anything, consider it, check it out, see whether you buy it or not. Because if it's true, then it's really life-changing. Yeah. And if it's not, then you just spend a bit of your time. So hopefully look into it, and I'm sure anyone here will be happy to talk to you about it.
Yes, we will be happy to talk to you about it. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah and Sarah, for the heartfelt sharing that no doubt has given us some things to think about. I'll now get Karis up to help us with our passage reading.
Hi guys! So today I'll be reading a short excerpt taken from an eyewitness account of Jesus, written by a friend of his called John. It's actually printed out on your handouts, so do follow along. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him." After saying these things, he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he meant taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus has died, and for your sake, I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give to you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, and though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, Son of God, who is coming into the world."
Hey, thanks so much, Karis, for reading for us. And thank you again, Dr. Sarah, for coming and being interviewed. Thank you for giving up your time. It's really wonderful to see you again, but also to see all of our guests here tonight. If it's your first time here, my name is Paul. I'm the campus pastor for SMU Christian Fellowship, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the last of our events this week on Why Bother with Jesus. You should have everything that you need on your handout. We didn't read all of it, but don't worry about that. We'll go through the portions that we didn't read as I go through the talk. The passage of the Bible is printed there along with an outline of where you're going. If you're new here, you should have also received one of these goodie bags. If you didn't receive a goodie bag, you can go and get one from the table at the back. In it, there is a little booklet called the Gospel of John. It's the book from which this eyewitness account is taken from. It's really small. You can finish it in like 3 bus rides, probably depending on where you live. It'll take me 3 bus rides from where I live. I encourage you, if what you've heard tonight interests you, please go home and read it, or ask the friend who brought you to read it with you. Before I dive in, I wanted us to get to know each other a little bit, and also to discuss kind of the question, the question that's on your sheet: what would it take to make you feel secure in life? What would it take to make you feel secure in life? Why don't you turn into your 2s and 3s, discuss that, and then I'll call us back together in a couple of minutes. Go for it. There's more discussion to be had. There's a Q&A at the end. I will, at the end of our talk, there's a chance to ask questions. Hopefully there'll be time for it. We try and answer every question here at SMU Christian Fellowship. There's no question that's going to be too offensive for us, so please feel free to send in your questions to that Slido link, hashtag Y3 on the bottom there. If I'm saying something and you had a question about it, or you had a question through the interview, write it down, and then I'll do my best to answer it at the end tonight. Great. So why bother with Jesus? Now, there are lots of reasons to bother with Jesus, and over the last 2 evenings, we've considered some key aspects of Jesus' identity. We've looked at his good kingship. We've seen that he's the only one who can get us to heaven. But this evening, I want us to consider something that affects every single person in this room. I want us to consider tonight that Jesus gives us ultimate security because he has power over death. You know, in life, we are all looking for security. If I asked you what would it take to make your life feel more secure, you might have said things like, in order to feel secure, I need money, or I need a job or a career. You might have said, I need good health. No health, no wealth. You could have all the money in the world, but if you died, that's it. Can't take your CPF with you. Security is something that we are all looking for. Our lives are plagued, really, with insecurity and uncertainty. If you look around us, most of Singapore is anxious and insecure. In fact, you might not have realized this, but we have a national narrative designed to breed insecurity in us. No one owes us a living. Our only resources are people. They're going to turn off the taps tomorrow. That kind of thing. We're small. It's designed to breed insecurity in us. A survey that was done by AIA, the insurers, a couple of years ago, they noted that Singaporeans have a culture of working long hours, with a significant proportion of employees reporting that they did not eat a balanced diet or take sufficient physical exercise. This is basically me. The survey also stated there are some concerns about the levels of stress in the Singapore workplace and poor sleep patterns amongst employees, with 51% of respondents saying they sleep less than 7 hours a night. Again, this is basically me. We are stressed and anxious because we don't feel secure. We don't feel safe. At the heart of it, we are worried that we don't have some things now, or we won't have some things in the future. And as a result, we don't feel safe. Now, I want to ask you to think about a list of things that you need to put in place to be secure. I can tell you now, it will be never ending. There are more things to worry about than we can imagine. Life is fundamentally insecure. It's the reason why insurance agents have jobs. It's why AIA did that survey in the first place. Because life is fundamentally insecure, and we are fundamentally afraid of insecurity. We're searching for certainty. But I want to ask you tonight again, can we really deal with life's insecurities? If you had a good career, if you had money, if you had health, would you actually be secure? I'm not sure you would. Now, those things can't genuinely provide you with ultimate security. They might give you the illusion of security. But if you're honest with yourself, at the end of the day, health, wealth, they can't provide security because fundamentally, one, we're not in control, and two, those things, they are temporary because we will die. Now, Sarah mentioned that in her interview just now. People are angry because they're afraid because they're not in control, and they're angry because they will die. So first, we're not in control of the world. We aren't in control of what happens to our lives. It was really striking to me that some of Sarah's patients are younger than us. So you and I can work hard to put in place all the financial security we want. We can earn enough money so that we think money will never be a problem again. You can study hard enough so you get a good career, so that you earn enough money, so you think money will never be a problem again. But you are in control of the macroeconomic or the geopolitical forces in this world. Just ask a Ukrainian. You are much less in control of the security of your own health. There is no insurance policy in this world that can actually stop you getting sick or dying. You have no idea whether your investment portfolio can disappear overnight. You might say to me, I've got enough money saved up in the bank. I've got a property that's going to generate income for me into perpetuity. I'll say to you, that's great, but it could disappear tomorrow. Just ask those who lived through the Asian financial crisis, the 2008 financial crisis, or if you bought crypto through FTX. We're just not in control. At the very heart of it, friends, if you really think about it, if you took the time tonight to consider this, the main reason we are ultimately insecure, the reason why security is elusive, is because we all die. Life will come to an end for every single person in this room. We can do all we can to put in place fences around our lives, but at the end of the day, no matter how hard you and I try, there is no lasting security on this earth because you're not in control and because we die. The insurance firms know this very well. Insurance premiums on life insurance are calculated based on when you are expected to die. You can hedge all you want, but at the end of the day, there is one insurance statistic that is a complete certainty, and that is that 1 out of every 1 person on this planet is going to die. Now, Dr. Sarah is going to have a job for as long as she wants. Have you ever considered that death renders your life ultimately void of security? The reality is, in this world, is that the places we find security in wealth, in health, even in our family, they're all temporary. Those two things, the fundamental lack of control and our death, make us insecure. And we're going to see this in our passage from the Bible now, because we're going to encounter a healthy young man named Lazarus who has gotten very sick. This little book, if you're new, you got a little book, or this passage is from an eyewitness account from the life of Jesus. So we're dealing today with events of real history. The names and the places are all detailed there because they're meant to be verifiable. This is real evidence for the claims of Jesus, and I encourage you to go away and read the rest of John's Gospel for yourself. But let me read from sentence number 1, there, right at the top, that little sentence 1 at the top. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. And it was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sister said to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, let's go to Judea again. We read here that Jesus is informed of the illness of his friend Lazarus. And Lazarus' desperate sisters come to him and say, Jesus, your friend is sick. And presumably they know something of Jesus' power and they expect him to do something about it. And what Jesus does next is completely shocking. Did you notice what causes Lazarus to die? This is where John's account gets shocking. Jesus, he hears about the sickness, but look at number 6, sentence 6. When he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. And then after this, he said to the disciples, let us go to Judea again. It's not what we expect to happen. We expect that when Jesus is told about Lazarus' sickness, he would turn and go straight away to be by his friend's side. But John tells us that not only does he not go, he deliberately hangs around for 2 days longer in the place where he was. And then after those 2 days, he says, let's go to Judea, which is a place another 2 days' journey away. So he's waiting around deliberately for 4 whole days. And that causes Lazarus to die. He did it on purpose. Martha even says to him, and if you look down to verse 21, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. She knows this. Her sister Mary, verse 32, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. That is the first thing I want us to see really clearly in our passage today. That Jesus, he is in complete control of everything that is happening here. He's in complete control of the events. Every single action he does is very deliberate, especially his decision to stick around for 2 more days so that Lazarus dies from his illness. And it seems cruel to me, it seems cruel at first, but Jesus tells us that the reason he's hanging around those 2 extra days in sentence 4 is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Somehow, this boy's death, this Lazarus' death, and his illness is going to bring both God and Jesus glory. So this is Jesus, right? He's totally in charge. He decides when and where his disciples go. He decides when and where he goes. There's no panic on his part here, no insecurity. Even though he's been told Lazarus is really sick, he's cool, calm, and collected. He knows he is in control of the events that are happening around him. It's got to make you wonder, right? How on earth can this guy be so calm? Only someone who knows of his own control over these events can be cool around death. We've got to ask, what is it about Jesus? What does he know about himself that convinces him that he's in control? You could compare that to us, or to the families that Dr. Sarah works with, who are not in control of events. If you were told that your family member had a terminal illness, how would you react? I'd be really fearful, I think, to be honest with you. And some people would despair. They would start to wail and cry. Some people would be fatalistic. No, there's nothing I can do about it. That's life. And all of those reactions stem from the fact that we are just not in control. But Jesus is different. He's calm, he's collected, he's so unfazed. Not just because he knows he's in control of the events around him, but because he knows that he has power over life and death itself. Jesus deliberately caused the death of Lazarus. He waits till he knows Lazarus is actually dead before he says in verse 11, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him." Let's look at the action all the way down at the bottom of the page, number 38, verse 38. So Jesus, he arrives at the tomb of Lazarus. Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." And Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe you sent me." When he said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" And the man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, his face wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." He says 3 words. Jesus says 3 words. "Lazarus, come out." And the man who has been a corpse for the last 4 days walks right out as if he's been sleeping, just having a nap. You're meant to notice, Jesus, he's got complete control over this guy's life and death. And John, the eyewitness to these events, really wants you to see that. That's why Jesus waits the 2 extra days, to make sure everyone knows Lazarus is dead. That's why Mary is so shocked when Jesus says, "Take the stone away," because the stench, if you've ever smelled any dead thing before, is unbearable. And yet just 3 words, "Lazarus, come out." And the man who had died, verse 44. John makes sure you know that. The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with the burial clothes that they buried him in. And Jesus says, "Unbind him and let him go." Jesus, he's totally in control of life and death. And it reveals who he really is. If you go on and read the rest of John's Gospel, you'll see that Jesus claims to be God himself in the flesh. There's no doubt about it. No one else other than the maker of life itself can bring someone else back from the dead. This is not a resuscitation, right? This is not a crash cart in the hospital. This is not a hallucination. The historical details are far too detailed in this to be a hallucination. This is a resurrection. This really happened. Jesus really brought Lazarus back from the dead. Two things you're meant to see from this episode. Just how in control Jesus is. Just how in control of life and death he is. But it's not really good enough, right, for him to just be in control. Because you've got to ask the question, what does that kind of power, what does Jesus' own power have to do with you and me? He might be in control, but I'm not. If true security is found in not dying, in me living forever, then there is only one real way for me to deal with my insecurity, which is to not die. Or to put it more positively, to live forever in a world that is not spinning outside of your control. In a good world which lasts forever, in which you last forever as well. That's the way to be secure, really. Not in an uncertain, out of control world which is in a tailspin like the one that we are in now when no security is available. Jesus, in this story, he actually gives us a hint of that world that's to come. You look down to verse 23, sentence 23. Jesus says to Martha, your brother will rise again. And Martha says to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. That's a hint in this book of a life to come, a world to come where there is no death, where there is true security. Jesus says again, verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Now friends, here is the most remarkable thing, because Jesus in verse 25 is offering eternal life to you and I. He's offering to use his immense power over life and death for your benefit. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. That's an incredible offer. Eternal life in a perfect world. But that's not all that Jesus offers, friends. Jesus doesn't just promise to fix the problem of death for you. Because if you go on and read the rest of John's Gospel, you realize that he offers to fix the cause of death for you as well. And that's our sin and our rebellion against God, the things that brought death into the world in the first place. The things that continue to be the cause of so much pain and suffering in an uncertain world. Our sin is our rebellion against God, our living in this world as if God didn't exist. We live as if He didn't make the world, even though He did. And God says, no, that's wrong. And death in this world is a sign that something is not right. It's God's judgment on our world. But Jesus says, I offer you eternal life. Not eternal life in this rubbish world, eternal life in a certain, secure, wonderful future. And friends, the way Jesus sorts out the problem later on in this book, the way he secures your eternal security is by giving up his own. Jesus is God himself. He's the creator of the universe, the maker of life, with power over life and death, come down to earth as a human being to sort out our problem, our insecurity. And he does that by offering up his life, his own life, his life for yours, his security for yours. Taking the punishment on our behalf for our own rebellion and ignorance of God. That's the point, friends. That Jesus is able to raise Lazarus to life, and so he's able to deal with your death as well. But first he must deal with your root problem, your sin. And he does that at the cross. And friends, the way to receive his offer is simply to believe his words, to trust him, to see that our sin causes death, it causes everything that's wrong with this world, but also to trust that Jesus can sort out all of that. He offers to give you eternal security. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And so as I close tonight, I wonder if you can see that true security is really found in eternal life, in not dying, in having death sorted. It's like having a spare tire in the back of your car. If you've got a spare tire, I don't have a spare, they stopped making cars with spare tires. If you have a spare tire in the back of the car, you drive with peace of mind. You drive with security in the knowledge that there's a spare in the boot. With Jesus, the tires on the car of your life might go flat. Someone might come and slash them and bring your car to a screeching halt. But you don't need to panic. It's okay. No insecurity is necessary in the knowledge that Jesus has dealt with the root cause of your death. And you've got a spare life in the back, a better one to come. And all Jesus asks is that you trust him. To put your trust in someone you know is in total control of this world, total control of your death, and total control of your life. A powerful God, but one who loves you so much that he died for you. And the question is for us tonight, will you trust him? Will you accept the solution that he has come to bring? As I close, friends, I think there are three possible options from our talks this week, three possible ways to respond. The first is that you could go on rejecting Jesus and to go on searching for security in a world in which you have no control, in a world in which you die. Can I encourage you not to do that? Or you could accept Jesus' offer of true security, to see that what he offers is eternal. And if you're ready to do that tonight, please don't keep it to yourself. Let the friend who brought you know. Come and speak to me afterwards. I'll be happy to chat with you how to walk and follow Jesus for the rest of your life. But probably for most people who are new in the room, you want to find out more. And we're going to have a few ways. Kyra will come up later and tell us a few ways about how we can do that. But please don't leave tonight without engaging with the things that you've heard, without engaging with the person of Jesus. Thanks for listening. I'll be up later to take questions.
The grace of God has reached for me and pulled me from the raging sea, and I am safe on the solid ground. The Lord is my salvation. I will not fear when darkness falls. His strength will help me scale these walls. I'll see the dawn of the rising sun. The Lord is my salvation. Who is like the Lord our God, strong to save, faithful in love? My debt is paid and the victory won. The Lord is my salvation. My hope is hidden in the Lord. He flies each promise of His word. When winter fades not leave me in the grave, but I will rise. He will call me home. The Lord is my salvation. Who is like the Lord our God? Strong to save, faithful in love. I am His faith and the victory won. The Lord is my salvation. Glory be to God the Father. Glory be to God the Son. Glory be to God the Spirit. The Lord is our salvation. Glory be to God the Father. Glory be to God the Son. Glory be to God the Spirit. The Lord is our salvation. The Lord is our salvation. The Lord is our salvation.
All right. So now we'll have a time of Q&A with the questions that you all submitted. So Santosh and Paul will take this time.
Hey guys, thanks so much for sending in some really great questions. We're gonna run for just about 10 minutes because I'm sorry we started a little bit late. I don't want to keep you back. If you need to run off, please don't. We won't be offended if you need to run off. Please feel free to. But we're gonna try and answer some of these questions now. Santosh is gonna ask them, so I don't have to hold my phone.
Yeah.
Great.
Sweet. Hey guys. So first question, thanks for sending your questions in. First one, is it labeling bad things that happen in life as things that are for the greater good or for God's glory, just to believe in magical resurrection? Isn't that kind of delusional?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for that question. So you remember that Jesus, he says kind of that Lazarus' sickness leading to death is to show God's glory, and I guess that's the same as what we'd say of Jesus' own death, the death of a preacher at age 33 years old, on a Roman cross 2,000 years ago. How can we say that is for God's glory? And isn't it to believe in a resurrection delusional, a magical resurrection kind of delusional? I think the answer is yes. It would be delusional if it didn't happen. I think that's the crucial thing. Lazarus' resurrection from the dead, Jesus' own resurrection from the dead really happened. And I'm not saying that as somebody who believes it like it's magic, like he magically rose from the dead. I believe that as somebody who is not that dumb, quite intelligent actually, if I like to say so myself, and who has investigated the evidence and the claims for the resurrection. And the way that I've done that, and that many people in this room, Dr. Sarah included, have done that, she's much more intelligent than me, is by looking at the eyewitness evidence for the death and resurrection of Jesus. And that's what I encourage you to do. So yes, if you go away and decide this didn't happen, crucially that Jesus' resurrection didn't happen, you're right. It's all magical, and everything that I believe, my whole existence, my job, and your friend who brought you here, this is a massive waste of time. But if it did happen, then as I said, it changes everything in your life because it has the possibility of giving you eternal security. So I encourage you to do that.
Maybe something helpful take on that as well is the next question. On the flip, why did Jesus weep if he knew Lazarus would eventually be resurrected? So is it just for God's glory yeah, why would he weep and be sad?
Yeah, so if you read the passage in the handout carefully, you have seen the shortest verse in the whole Bible, right? Jesus wept. And Jesus, he gets to the tomb of his friend Lazarus and he cries. He really cries real tears. He cries tears that his follower John sees and records. Now, why does he do that? And I think the answer to that has got something to do with the way that people react to Dr. Sarah and the way that people react to death in general. It's that death is not a natural thing in our world. No matter how much death Dr. Sarah sees in her job, I don't think she can bring herself to say that it's just part of life that people die. It is an unnatural thing that people get angry at, that they don't understand. And because it's not meant to be part of our world. Human beings are not meant to live 80 or 90 years if you're lucky enough and then die. I think you realize when you get to that stage, you are constantly wondering whether or not there's anything more. Can this be all there is? And the answer is no. Jesus has died and risen again to tell you that that's not all there is. And so death is unnatural, and Jesus is angry at it, and he's sad about it that his friend is dead, and so he weeps. He's not just God, he's fully human as well. He has a completely human reaction to death. But crucially, he does something about it, right? He doesn't just leave Lazarus dead. Like, he shows that he's the one who has power over Lazarus, and that Lazarus' resurrection is a small little picture of Jesus' own resurrection, which is another picture of our own resurrection at the end.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Paul. I'll stick just the fact that God gave us life, and death being the opposite of that would make him just as sad. And so it's not just that he's human and he's weeping, but also the fact that he's God and he's sad that people are dying. Yeah. Thanks, man. Another question: why does Jesus dying on the cross lead to eternal life for all of us? Why is this the way God decided to fix these things?
Great. So I don't know if you recall in the talk, I said that death is the cause of our insecurities. But you're going to ask the question, if death is not a natural thing in our world, how did it come about in the first place? And I think I said in my talk that death comes about into our world because of our rebellion against God, our ignorance of God, our kind of living in God's world as if he doesn't exist. Last night, Santosh talked about gave the analogy of living in your parents' house, eating their food, using their Wi-Fi, leaving the dishes in the sink, coming back at all hours, not caring about them being worried. That's a little bit like what we are like with God. We live in his world as if he doesn't exist. And that deserves a judgment. Like, your parents deserve to get angry. God deserves to get angry because he made us, he made our world. And he wants to be recognized as a good God who gave us good things, but we take it and basically rub it in his face. And that's the reason why death comes into our world. It's the reason why it's God's sort of way of showing us that something is really wrong here. And the way that Jesus fixes it is not simply to show you that he can remove death, but to show you that he fixes the root cause behind death. That he fixes our rebellion against God. He fixes our ignorance of God. He comes to, as Santosh said last night, to make God known to us. And that's why his death on the cross and his resurrection are the solution to death and to our insecurities in this world.
Hey, thank you so much, Paul. Two pretty similar questions about finding security in things here. How do you draw the boundary between not finding security in temporary things or just not caring about anything? And similarly, what would you say to someone who finds more immediate gratification in our lives now and they think that it's more worth it over eternal life in heaven?
Great. Okay, so taking the first one. So I personally, I struggle with this, right? Because like you, there are things in this world I can see and touch that give me the illusion of security. So I think, okay, if I buy this insurance policy, I'll be okay. If I've got this income generating thing that can give me some money on a regular basis, I'm gonna be okay. But actually, I really don't know. If God give me a heart attack right now and I'll fall dead, there's no real security without an eternity. And so I struggle with that because I can actually, I think that those things will give me security. And I think the way I deal with it is to remember constantly that Jesus did die and rise again. Somebody did die, come back to life to tell us that this life is not all that there is. And I think that's really important because when I remember that, then I hold on to the things in this life quite lightly. I don't feel, of course I need them, I need food, water, and air, the three basic things to live. I need clothes to wear to kind of like present myself decently, that kind of thing. I need those things, and God knows I need them, He gives them to me. But He also tells me that actually you're looking forward to something better, Paul. You're looking forward to eternal life in a better world.
Yes, I guess.
So what's the second question?
Just on that, so if I'm trusting God and I find the security in Him, then do I care about nothing here on this earth? Yeah, so complete nothingness.
No, I don't think that's true. I think actually believing in the life after death, believing in the better world to come gives your life on this earth so much more meaning and purpose than if you didn't know there was something to come. So if you don't believe in life after death, you don't believe in kind of like knowing God, like actually what are you living for in this life? For if you assume you're gonna live for 80 years, what are those 80 years on this earth for? Are they just to make you happy? And are you actually gonna be happy? What if you don't attain happiness in 80 years? What if Steve Jobs is a liar and actually you don't find fulfillment in the thing that you do? You know, what happens then? I think trusting Jesus' words about the afterlife, trusting John's account of there being something more than this life gives me true meaning and purpose. It helps me to view the things in this world in perspective of everything that's to come.
Sure, and I think some things that will give your friends purpose who brought you here will be to help you get to know God too. And hopefully that's what they try to do the next however many years God has given them here on earth. Maybe one last question, and there are a lot more questions here. One last question about God's character. Why are some people created by God but destined to reject Him just to glorify Him? Is that a pretty cruel thing for God to do? Is that contrary to who He is?
Great. So I like the question because it assumes a couple of things, but it doesn't assume one very important thing. So it assumes that there is a God, and that if there is a God, that He is actually God, so in control of every single aspect of this world, including the decisions that you and I make every single day. That's a good assumption. So it is a right thing to believe that there is a God who made this world, because something doesn't come from nothing, and that if there is someone who made the world, that He rightly is in control of every aspect of it. But I think the thing the question misses out is the fact that you and I have responsibility for the choices that we make in this life. I got up this morning, and whilst it was part of God's plan for me to put on my clothes, brush my teeth, and eat my cornflakes, I was responsible for every single one of those decisions as well. Both those things are true. You cannot deny that you had agency in those decisions, that you made them. I'm going to see my dentist on Saturday. If I didn't brush my teeth, she's going to hold me responsible. In fact, she probably is, because I haven't been flossing. That's the first thing she's going to tell me. Like, so like that's the thing that, and teeth are pretty important in my job. But
Information.
but that's true, right? So like in God's sovereignty, yes, I haven't been doing the right thing with my body. I am responsible for the choices that I make. And the same is true with our response to God and our response to Jesus. There is still a decision that needs to be made on your part. And actually God is telling you, leave the other stuff to me. Leave the running of the universe to me. You need to respond rightly to my revelation of myself in the Bible.
Thanks so much, Paul.